Tyrone,
Pat.
The auditions have finished. The casts have been chosen. The teams are set. The conventions are through. The action's ready to begin. In this corner, we have Donald, the incumbent Trump, weighing in at a svelte 230 pounds, running with Mike, Indiana Pence. In the other corner, we have Joe Biden, AKA Chauncey Gardner. Do yourself a favor one time. Look up the movie Being There from 1979 and tell me if I'm not spot on calling referring to former Vice President Chauncey Gardner and his running mate, Kamala Harris. And I pronounced it right. You know how? You know the little word trick I played in my mind?
What's that?
Right after I was born, a gentleman named John F. Kennedy became president, and he led during the reign of Kamala Harris. Okay. Okay. So here we are. The polls for the last 2 or 3 months have shown a fairly decisive lead for Joe Biden. After the convention now, there seems to be a little movement. We have cities in chaos around the country. We have an election exactly 2 months from today on November 3rd. What say you, my friend?
Well, listen, you're in the polling business, so maybe you can help me out with something. I haven't seen a poll or heard one talked about since the Democrat convention. And I'm wondering, why that is, why these polls, because, before that, when Biden was ahead by 200 points, they were telling us that every half hour.
Daily. Yes.
Yeah, but now I'm not seeing any polling information. I'm just wondering why.
So we have the proliferation of polling, and we have a situation now where all of a sudden it's becoming a little quiet, as you asked. We're not seeing the polls reported quite as much. But the polling I'm seeing fundamentally still has Biden up in a national poll, which again, we don't have a national election. We have 51 separate, disparate elections. But a national poll can give us a sense. But I would tend to agree that the reportage of polling the last week or so has diminished in comparison to what it was basically throughout the summer.
And I think it's going to continue to slide into Trump's favor. I read something yesterday that said that Black support is way up, as well as Hispanic support. I saw the Amish, who don't say anything about anything usually. The Amish are riding around Pennsylvania with Trump flags on their wagons. So I think that we're in many ways seeing another 2016 where, for whatever reason, the media has chosen to try and demoralize the Republican vote. If I was playing that strategy, I'd try to make them feel like it was a fait accompli in Trump's favor. So people stay home.
So if you're gonna play, I agree. If you're gonna play the game, I agree completely with you. Don't juice them, energize them by saying, "Hey, you got to get active," which is what your behind conveys.
Right.
Do the exact. Oh, this is in the bag for Trump. Don't bother showing up.
Exactly. Okay. But the left has proven itself, especially in this cycle. They've proven themselves pretty adept at creating Trump voters. Look at the McCluskeys. These people that held the guy had the AR-15 and the lady had the pistol. They had these people were card-carrying, Democrat-supporting liberals who went from that to appearing on the Republican National Convention. Okay, the left is out there creating. I mean, look at the walk away movement. They're creating Trump support, and every single time they lose, they don't say, "You know what, guys? They're not buying what we're selling. We got to tack back more toward the right." They go further left each time.
I know. And that is the unique element of this election. 16 was a little bit of a change in strategy from what any election, national election, has always been. It's very simple formula. Kind of go to the direction of the party to secure the nomination, and then move back to the center for the general election. It's a tried and true formula, and it's a tried and true formula because it's common sense. You got to appeal to a certain group initially, and then you've got to appeal to a much broader group, which means you've got to kind of move back to the middle. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they chose to do in Maryland either, my friend. Remember, Ben Jealous gets the nomination, wins by a larger margin than anyone thought, but still he only got 40% of the vote. And then he never went back to the middle.
Yeah.
And we saw the result. The impossible was accomplished. A Republican in the state of Maryland wins re-election, but not only wins by a double-digit margin.
Yeah.
That is almost mathematically impossible, but it happened in 2018 here in the state. The way the Democrats are continuing, although we are seeing a little backtracking with Chauncey last week saying all of a sudden these riots are a problem, and Don Lemon on TV saying, hey, these riots have to be stopped, and there seems to be a little bit of moderation in the language from the left. But fundamentally, I don't think at the end of the day they're going to basically change that hard left strategy.
It's too late. They've cemented themselves, they've branded themselves as the party that is anti-law and order. And that's easy to do when you're out there talking about defund or abolish the police, okay? That's an extreme position. For months, they didn't have any nuance in that whatsoever. Defund the police, abolish the police, and hey, that's what they branded themselves as. And now it seems so disingenuous that they're trying to come up out of that. They're really in a weird spot too, because if they go too far in that direction, then we can start talking about Kamala Harris and her overzealousness in terms of prosecution, and Joe Biden's crime bill. Did you see that? Did you see the woman on the RNC convention? That
the wife of Dorn, the cop.
No, not her.
No,
the lady that was pardoned by Trump, and she said, you know, I've been incarcerated for an inordinate amount of time thanks to the Biden crime bill. So they're between a rock and a hard place.
No, exactly. And there really are, politicians evolve. Politicians, throughout, particularly ones with long careers, but there's generally sort of a tact a little different. They're in this flip, and that's what the party's trying to do, is pretend what was wasn't and what is isn't. And will the American voters buy it? I don't think so, Tyrone. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
As the cities are burning, particularly, I mean, this isn't like in the recesses of voters' minds. Front and center nightly, what's happening in Portland, what's happening in Minneapolis, what happened the other night in Kenosha, what's happened in Seattle, what happens in Baltimore, Atlanta, San Jose, St. Louis. Should I keep on going? Because it's New York, because it's LA, because it doesn't end, my friend.
There are two metrics, and I'm no pollster. I don't have your expertise, but there are two metrics that I'm looking at that are speaking volumes. If you look at New York City, if you look at these liberal strongholds, okay, and you look at the real estate numbers, did you know San Francisco has a 94% glut? They have a 94% increase year over year of housing inventory, okay? Because that, and U-Haul is saying they can't keep enough trucks in California because people are fleeing in droves, okay? So that's one metric I look at is people saying, you know what, I'm voting with my.
That's a big metric too, Tyrone.
Mm-hmm. Another one is these gun purchases. Okay. Uh, it's funny because I was talking to an individual the other day and she mentioned gun control. I said, that debate's over. Okay. You've got liberals out here purchasing guns like this, they're going out of business. Okay. So those two metrics align with, at least the way I see it, a Trump vote. Now, not all of them, granted. You've got
No, I hear
some
you.
of these, you've got, real quick, you've got some of these liberals who have voted for liberal policies in places like California and New York. Now they're fed up with it and they're moving, they're taking that cancer elsewhere. Okay. But a lot of these votes are that's a proxy for a Trump vote.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know what boggles my mind more than anything is watching TV at about 10 of 5 last night and seeing the stock market at 29,000 something. I said, what? You know, that's what's crazy. Now, what the left, what the Dems will say, oh, that's for the rich. That's for the rich. How many people in this country, my age, maybe even a little younger, unfortunately, and older, are looking to that investment that they have to secure the rest of their lifetime? Many.
Absolutely.
Not 40%, not 50%, not the 10 percenters or the 1 percenters, 60, 70, 80% of Americans. So twofold. For the left, again, to kind of try to run a class warfare campaign, that ain't going to fly. The argument that the economy is in the toilet, while there are certain pockets that got devastated by the idiocy that is the coronavirus scare, it's amazing how resilient this economy's been. And what is the number one predictor of re-election for an incumbent president in these United States of America? The economy.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. You tell me.
Hey, look, I think you're spot on. I also think that it's very interesting, just to pivot a little bit. You know, they caught old Nancy Pelosi getting her hair done without the mask, without, paying no attention to the precautions. The mayor of Chicago did the same thing.
Right.
Governor Cuomo's out walking his dog, no mask. Fauci sitting at the baseball game, no mask. You even had the governor, the mayor of Pittsburgh come down. Now he's got his restaurant shut down. Came down here to Maryland to enjoy a sit-down meal in a restaurant. So they don't seem to be afraid. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is a woman who has pre-existing conditions, I think she's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80. She officiated a
85.
wedding. She officiated
85.
a wedding. Okay, so she's definitely in that target group. She officiated a wedding with no mask on. It's almost as if they know something about this that we don't, because they don't seem to be afraid of it. And, if that's the case, after shutting this economy down, there's one positive in that they sent us into that recession quickly, but to have destroyed all of these businesses and all of these jobs is just, none of these people responsible should be reelected to anything ever again.
Oh, I hear you, brother. And you're right. Maybe they know something that we don't. And maybe it's also a huge extreme case of arrogance of the elite. Okay?
No doubt.
Because we've seen it throughout. Good for me, but not for thee.
Exactly. We've got a bunch of people who they've forgotten, or they have allowed us to forget that they're supposed to be public servants, not, some sort of royalty, dukes and duchesses and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's where we are today. And I just think that this corona deal has exposed a lot of that.
I think so. And I think all that's good. I mean, I think You know, it's so hard to gauge these days, Tyrone. We're talking about the polling earlier, and you know, where really are things, but we don't have an honest broker we don't have a media that's an honest broker.
Not at all.
And so it's hard to really get a sense of things in the country. You know, I mean, they've been so hell-bent, the Democratic Party, the media, on destroying Trump since day one, that they lock themselves into these narratives, and they're not going to let facts get in the way. You know, the old joke is he's not going to let a fact destroy a good story. But the point of the truth is that literally has become the MO.
Right.
I saw a movie when I was about 10 years old. It was called Guide for a Married Man. And one of the little skits in it was called Deny, Deny, Deny. It had Joey Bishop, and his wife was the actress who played Millie Helper in Dick Van Dyke. And so I was scared. And the routine, the bit was Joey Bishop's in his bedroom with this foxy mama, okay, it's not his wife, and in walks Millie Helper, his wife, says, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And Joey Bishop's response is, "What?" Her, pointing to the woman that he's in bed with. Who? Her. I don't see anybody. And as they're going back and forth, the woman gets up, gets dressed, and walks out of the room and leaves. And at the end, Millie Helper is almost convinced that she's insane, that she didn't see anything. You know, that it was called Deny, Deny, Deny. That was the skit. And I thought to myself at the time, oh, that is funny. And I made a little joke about it. I think back in 16 elections, say, hey, this is the strategy of Clinton's campaign team. They've hired the deny media consultants. But it was a joke. It's not a joke anymore, Tyrone.
Yeah.
That literally is the way the media presents news to us. What?
Absolutely.
What girl? You know, it's insane. We cannot, as a country, keep going on like this, Tyrone.
And this is why I tell people, again, you've got to, I do not allow televised news in this house. It is disinformation, okay? It's Pravda. It's Soviet era Pravda. Now, I do consume news, obviously, but I consume it from sources like the Wall Street Journal. I actually do consume some of the Bloomberg stories, some of them. You got to be very selective. And then there are some overseas sources from India and the UK that I get news out of. But you got to be very discriminating on where you get your information, because, you know, if you aren't, you can walk away believe in anything. You remember, it used to be a time in the country where you would have a discussion with someone and they said, well, where'd you hear that? I heard it on the news. And that would be the end of it, okay? But now, if you hear someone say, I heard it on the news, you're like, wait a minute, you know, that doesn't mean anything. In fact, it probably means it's full of half-truths.
Yeah, no. Well, look, here we are. We got, as I said, the conventions are completed. And just a real quick aside, I mean, sort of the general consensus among the cognoscenti is that the Democratic convention was uplifting and bright, and the Republican convention was dark and desperate. So I don't want to rehash that. I want to move forward. How do you see, unless, you know, we all love kind of the horse race aspect, and I'm not talking necessarily numbers, but just sort of the ebb and flow of the campaign, just kind of moving forward the next couple of weeks through September. How do you see things breaking out between Donald the incumbent Trump and the challenger Joe Chauncey Gardner Biden? Give me your take.
Good question. Well, I see the Biden campaign, man, they are up against a real dilemma, because the more they put their candidate out in front of a camera and a microphone, they're taking a huge risk. They're taking a huge risk. So
rolling the dice every time.
As we come down this home stretch, they got no choice. They have to do that. I think their initial plan probably was to put Harris up front a bit more, but then they
Right.
started getting blowback about, well, who's really going to be the president? Okay, and they had to walk away from that a little bit. So I just think that this situation is going to get better for Trump, and then I think the knockout blow is going to come in the first or maybe the second debate. I'd be surprised if he debates at all, if Biden debates at all. But if he does, you might as well, what do they say? It's an old boxing saying. We can print up some advertisements and put them on the bottom of his shoes because he's going to be laying flat on his back after a debate with Trump.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine him getting through 10 minutes, much less
Yeah.
an hour, hour and a half. Let me ask you a question. How do you think this insane violence happening throughout many urban areas, how is that going to manifest itself, insinuate itself into the political campaign as a factor? What say you?
Oh, yeah, it already has. I think, imagine the people living in those areas that
Oh
have,
my Lord. Oh my
you know,
Lord.
so not only are you seeing your property value dwindle, if you're lucky, that's all you've seen.
If you're
Maybe you've
lucky, you
been
still have property.
right. I was
They
going to
haven't
say
been
maybe you've
burned to the
been
ground.
burned out. Exactly. So you're dealing with that. Um, you're seeing the results of police who have stepped back again with this defund the police thing. Look at New York City. They're back to the what was the old Charles Bronson movies? Death Wish.
Death Wish. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
they're
yeah.
back to the Death Wish days. Okay. And people. Yeah.
Can I interrupt real quick? 'Cause I
Sure.
want to convey one thing to anybody who happens to watch this. My opinion, it's not the cops at all. The cops are not doing anything other than what they're being forced to do by the impotent, incompetent buffoons at City Hall and the city councils throughout this wonderful country. The cops' hands are totally locked. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't. So
Yeah.
because that game's going to be played at some point where, hey, it's all the cops' fault. That's a bunch of crap. So I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
No, no, it's a great point. I think that the police have responded to, there's a certain segment of society that doesn't want police. So, hey, okay, here's what it looks without police. So if I was a police officer, I would be in a mode where, when I get up and go out and want to do my job, my priorities are not ending up in a courtroom, charged as a defendant, hit with a bunch of legal fees, So yeah, I'll respond uh, reactively, and I think that's what you're seeing across the country right now. So this violence has already been factored in, and I think people are just sitting anxiously awaiting the opportunity to pull a lever for Trump because they see him as synonymous with law and order. And look, okay, sure, you've got some bad cops out there. You got some bad bakers, butchers, candlestick makers, holsters, bad real estate professional. I mean, okay. And yes, I'm all for looking at these issues and saying, how can we reform it so that we are better, so that we understand that the public and the police have a relationship that is not at first adversarial. Fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fine. But yeah, but they've the pendulum has swung way too far, and it's
Yep.
going to result in a Trump. I think it's going to be a landslide, Pat.
I'm not sure I disagree with you, brother. I'm telling you, anger does not split down the middle, okay? And we are an angry country at one level, and it really doesn't. I tend to agree, and I think things are going to start happening, rather quickly as far as kind of defining events for this election. And we're on, as well as I do, that 2 weeks in politics is the blink of an eye. 2 months is a couple of blinks of the eye. It's going to happen quickly. with Donald Trump in the White House for the last 4 years, things change not only daily, but hourly. Because of his personality, his rather large personality, and because of the antipathy by the majority of the media toward him, creating the conflict. And it's back and forth. We're going to get at that, and we're going to get that accelerated. And I'm afraid that Chauncey Gardner is not going to be able to keep pace with what's happening. They're going to get desperate. They're going to double down with the insanity, with the character assassination. And I think by the end, possibly what you described of landslide proportions is in the realm of possibility. I don't know. I can't predict the future. I can predict the past, Tyrone Keys, and that suggests that this is not going to end well for Mr. Biden, Ms. Harris, or the Democratic Party as a whole.
Not at all. And let me just say one more thing about a lot of folk who were on the fence in 2016 and ended up coming over for Trump. A lot of people did it on one issue, and that was the Supreme Court. Well, right. That issue is still here. And I predict that when Trump wins, you're going to see Justice Thomas go ahead and retire. Okay, he's going to feel comfortable doing that. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is just going to say, hey, look, I gave it the good fight. I mean, you can't take that away from her. Okay, and she'll go ahead and bow out. And Trump will get at least 2 more justices. And more importantly, he'll get to replace Ginsburg with a solid conservative so that we can that guy, Chief Justice Roberts, he's such a disappointment. But we'll be able to.
I don't know what he's at. I don't know what's driving him, but anyway.
We'll be able to negate him with the replacement for Ginsburg.
Yeah.
And hopefully he'll get a good. So hopefully one of these picks will be in their late 40s, and will be on that court forever.
You know, the interesting one out there, and I'm no expert by any stretch on potential nominees for the Supreme Court, but is that I think her name is Amy Barrett woman, that she will create quite a well, and that's the other thing though, man. Where's the Senate after November? If things go totally in the toilet for the Democrats, the 52-48 for the GOP could go 55-56. Is it possible we could have a 25, is it possible we could have a 30, 40, 50 seat swing in the House? Takes the House away from the Dems. You know, it's impossible for me to imagine, and I could be wrong, it's impossible for me to imagine that come the beginning of 2021 that Nancy Pelosi is still in charge. I can't fathom that. It's possible. On paper, it's hard to see right now the House flipping back to the Republicans, who are no great shakes, Tyrone.
Right.
They're weakening, but just simply by being a binary choice, if the Dems have to go, somebody's got to assume control.
Right.
But you know me. You know I like betting, plugging a nickel down or two on the Derby. By the way, are you and Sarita going to be here Saturday?
I'm 90% sure we will be. Just waiting on confirmation. Okay. One other thing. Yep.
Let me tell you right now, I'd make a $2 bet. Now, I'd want some odds right now, and we'll see how it evolves. I'd bet that $2 on the possibility that the bottom so drops out from the Democrats by November 3rd that the House flips. So we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out.
I would love to see that. And you got to believe there's some thinking in the back rooms of the Democrat delegation in Congress saying that, you know what, we haven't been doing that great in fundraising as compared with the Republicans anyway. Nancy Pelosi's whole claim to fame was her ability to bring in dollars. But I think she has outlived her usefulness. I think it's time that, hey, look, if they don't want to come back to the center fine, all right. But again, they see that in so far in lack of polling, but in November they will see once again that it's just not working. For God's sakes, the Soviet Union doesn't even practice. They never even practice some of the stuff that these guys are talking about here in America. Okay, they're just too far left, and that's fine. They'll pay that
You
price.
know, and no, I agree. And you know what I see when I think of Joe Biden and even Nancy Pelosi to some extent, and you know Chuck Schumer, and just sort of the whole Democratic establishment. You know what comes to my mind? Lassitude. And I'm going to ask the audience to look that up. But that's, you know, and Joe Biden is certainly the exemplar of that. Okay, the tired, the feel of exhaustion.
Yeah,
The whole party, the whole engine of the Democrats that's been chugging down the tracks for 200 years, my friends. It
yep, yep.
seems like it's running out of steam,
And
and they've made this one last gasp of reaching, grabbing the young left. I don't think so. What do you think?
no, they you're absolutely right. Look, I cannot for the life of me understand why they really got behind Biden. You know, in the way that they did. They cast Tulsi Gabbard aside, and it looked like
I,
she was everything that they talked about. I mean, here we have sharp young lady. She's got not just a military background, she has combat experience. Okay. Uh, you had Buttigieg, who, you know, he represented that youthful side as well. But what do? They go with Joe Biden, and for his running mate, the guy, Billy Mays, he used to say, but wait, there's more. And for his running mate, they choose a woman who couldn't get one vote in the primary, okay, from a state that they already have locked down. So you chose one of the most unpopular primary contenders, again, from California, which you already have, and which seems wacky to the rest of the nation. You chose her to be your running mate. What a pair. What a pair.
and Tyrone, yeah. Oh my God, it's so counter to everything that's been done in the past. Maybe they're geniuses and figure something out. Okay, I don't know.
Maybe.
But you know what? I was kidding my buddy a couple of months ago because, you know, professionally, this is my 10th presidential election, which is unbelievable because I look like I'm about 30. So that doesn't even work out mathematically, but it's the truth. But here's what we got. You know, I go back to, you know, like 76. Okay, you got Reagan challenging, I wasn't in the biz professionally in 76. You got Reagan challenging Ford the incumbent, but, you know, the succeeded incumbent. And, you know, it starts out, but Ford just beats him over and over and over and over. But Reagan keeps hanging, and all of a sudden, Reagan comes through in North Carolina. Jesse Helms goes all in for him, and it's a contest. It's got an ebb and a flow. You look at even Clinton, Obama back in 08. Okay, Clinton's sort of the front runner. Obama comes in, surprises in Iowa, and oh my God! And then Clinton comes back and, you know, wins New Hampshire, and you gotta tussle back and forth. And Obama, okay, it's got a natural rhythm. Even the last time in 16, you certainly had that with Trump, where you got Trump coming out and leading the polls from January 1st to the Iowa caucus, and then Lying Ted comes and wins. I mean, every poll prior, so big surprise. But then Trump comes back in New Hampshire and kicks his butt. But again, this year, this is how it happened. Okay, and this is what I was kidding my buddy about a couple of months ago. Okay, we start the year, Iowa caucus. Okay, the most bizarre thing that ever happened. We still don't know the final result, but it doesn't matter. Iowa caucus, Joe Biden gets creamed. Single digit result in 5th, 6th, 8th place, whatever. We don't know. And then New Hampshire, now we've got a primary instead of a caucus. Joe Biden gets obliterated. Again, single digits. Then we've got Nevada. Joe Biden gets trounced by Bernie Sanders. And then Joe Biden's the nominee. Okay, we had South Carolina, but get it? He gets smeared. He gets trounced. He gets decimated. Joe Biden's the nominee. Is this the most bizarre election season you've ever seen in your life?
It is, unless I'll go back to something that I mentioned to you maybe about 6 weeks ago or more. Unless you factor this in, Democrats are just saying, look, let's just throw somebody out there and prime this thing for Gavin Newsom in 2024. Okay, so we can't win because we don't want Harris or Biden to really carry it into 8 years possibly or more. You know, it could be,
Right.
it could look like 10 years if Biden hops off 2 years later and then Harris carries it from there, because she's got the right to run for 2 terms as long as she doesn't serve, I think, more than 2 years on his first term, I
I'm not
believe.
sure how that works.
But you got a long potential horizon if they were to get in. So I'd love to be a fly on the voting booth. I'm telling you right now, Gavin Newsom, Cuomo, Larry Hogan, these guys are going to be voting Trump because they don't want to see Biden win, because they want that field cleared for 2024.
That is, and that's the element of human beings, human nature, wanting, sort of ultimately what's best for me. And that's what we all want. So I totally dig it. It's kind of funny thinking in those terms, but I think there is going to be a lot of that going on. So it makes me laugh. Well, look, let's do this, my friend. You and I re-up in 2 weeks.
Okay.
See where things are at. And, we'll kind of maybe think, if we think in 2-week increments from throughout, and but maybe we might have to do it more frequently, because things might be unfolding so quickly that, you and I got to kind of figure it out and let the people out there know what we think.
Sounds good to me.
Good talking to you, my friend, and I will see you soon.